When I was asked to moderate this session, I was actually quite excited. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the outgoing AFOA chair. My name's Rodney Nelson. I'm Anishinaabe, Sioux, and as I always joke, part Dutch, hence the big head. But I'm also a professor at Carleton University, and education is absolutely critical for our people in building capacity within our communities. And we hear about education a lot, but of course we have trouble with accessing education, with caps on education spending. Many of our students go, of course, without any funding to universities and to colleges and even technical institutes. Almost on a daily basis, I'm in touch with bands to try to see if there's any funding. So this was exciting when I saw this, because part of our journey is to make sure that we take care of our own as well. And that's what today I think is a lot about, is taking control of our own education in the future. So, I would like to welcome our guest speakers today. It's really exciting to have Grand Chief Derek Niebenak here. Of course, he's well known and everybody does know him. You'll be up to talk shortly, but I just wanted to give you a Chief McWedge for coming down, and I know that it's always exciting to hear your words. We have also with us Steve Chaudet and Christopher Ashque. Did I say that right?
Kind of.
Ashque?
There you go.
Hey, you should know that. That's a niche word. So starting off, Mr. Steve Chaudet is a Métis president, founder, and driving force of the King and Benton Group of companies. Mr. Chaudet has been an active member of the Brantford business community since he acquired his first vacant industrial building in 1996. Since then, the King and Benton Group of companies has participated in the acquisition, development, redevelopment, and remediation of over 800 acres of development land in Ontario, with a total investment value that exceeds $300 million. Mr. Chaudet also invested a substantial amount of time and effort into building relationships with local, regional, and provincial governments and First Nation communities and groups throughout Canada. His efforts of developing these relationships are accumulated by the formulation of Gaswente Holdings, a strategic partnership between Mr. Chaudet and the members of the Six Nations of the Grand River. This joint venture was created to assist with the implementation of equitable economic and social development opportunities with First Nation communities and the corporate sector. We also have Christopher Ashque. Mr. Christopher Ashque is a Ojibwe from the Chippewas of Nawash First Nations located in Ontario. He has 2 degrees from McMaster University and Queen's University. I won't hold it against you since you don't go to Carleton. It's fine. And attended school in England for a year. Mr. Ashque has a banking and finance background and has worked for the Bank of Montreal, BMO, or Aboriginal Banking, and Aboriginal Business Canada, the Aboriginal Business Development Program, and the Mississaugas of New Credit First Nation. Chris has worked with Kanata Financial for 2 years and is involved in the development of the electronic funds transfers, RESP, and joint venture initiatives. I welcome to the stage. Chris.
Thank you everyone for attending. Well, we wanted to open up, we wanted to ask the Grand Chief if he could come up and say a couple words, as he was fundamental in helping us structure this business model. So Derek.
It's my great honor to be here this afternoon to come in support of the presentation. I want to thank Steve for the invitation, of course my friend Chief Tim Ketchway, Chief Roulette from Sandy Bay, and of course Chris, and all of you who are spending your time this afternoon to listen to this very important presentation and discussion that we need to have on building new trusts and maintaining the trust for our children, because that's what I believe leadership is all about. I want to thank National Chief Phil Fontaine for listening into this presentation this afternoon. I was very honored and grateful to hear the words of our former national chiefs this morning in the plenary session. regaining that perspective and that reminder as to why we do this kind of work. And as I said, leadership has always been about, for me, maintaining the trust of our children and building new ones. So when it comes to education, there's nothing more important that we can do than provide them with a solid foundation in terms of creating opportunity for them. I say this in the context of myself, what I believe to be the living manifestation of the treaty right to education. I've always thought about treaty education, or the treaty right to education, as something more than a living allowance, or something more than a book and tuition allowance that we pay from our band accounts to post-secondary institutions and colleges and so forth. That to me is more on the program side. I believe that the treaty right to education is really about the opportunities that we create from within our families, within our communities, to create spaces where children can learn. That's what the treaty right to education is. It's about the opportunity to become learned. And what mechanisms do we create within our communities and within our nations and people to make sure that that opportunity is realized each and every time a young person is brought into this world? Because that's what our responsibility is. Now within the Post-First Nations Education Act political climate, many people were critical of treaty leadership such as myself, who said we're not going to compromise on the treaty right to education in favor of a package or a consolidated suite of new funding dollars or new funding promises from a politically expedient government. I took a lot of criticism for that because people said you guys complain a lot, but you don't provide solutions. Well, what you're going to hear today is one of the solutions that we've been working on for a long time. It's about creating that opportunity and cultivating that opportunity right from an early stage in life, and letting our children know that we value them as tomorrow's leaders, as tomorrow's doctors, lawyers, teachers, whatever they choose to be. And we value that and we cultivate that by making investments now at the beginning of their lives. Not waiting for government to say, yes, community, here's your post-secondary funding, you can send kids to school again. Let's take responsibility as parents. Let's take responsibility as guardians of our young ones and make the investments as soon as they come into the world. Let's set aside that money now so that we can cultivate that opportunity and let them realize it when it's time for them to make that decision. That's what I've always believed. I believe within a decolonized context, the Anishinaabe people will always forecast. They'll always operate from a visionary space where we create programs, we create the opportunities by investing wisely, the dollars that are available to help them along. That means using the children's special allowances or the children's tax benefits in a way where the dollar begins to work on its own. And by the time the child grows up to be 18, 19 and they emancipate from CFS or they emancipate from the home nest and start to go out on their own, they have a seed of money to work with. How greater can we honor our young people than to show our commitment right from birth, right from day one? And I'm sharing this with you knowing full well that I come from a jurisdiction that they call Manitoba that is considered the epicenter of child apprehension in the industrialized world. Over 10,000 children in care. And I need to know, in order to get out of bed each day, that we're doing the best we can for these little ones that are being put into this system. Are we creating the investments right from birth that are going to allow them to flourish? Or are we setting them up to fail? These are the perplexing questions that we must ask ourselves in leadership. And I'm talking not just leadership within a political organization, the leadership around your own kitchen table, the leadership that you must demonstrate within your own family dynamic. That's where I come from. Like I said, I'm honored to be here today. I'm honored to be in Mohawk territory. I've been out here a few times over the years, by air and by land, and I've made some great friends along the way. I'm Niban Makwa, as I said, Summer Bear. I'm from the Minnehaha Anishinaabe people. My mother's side is part of the Pine Creek Indian Band. My father's side is from the Sandy Bay Ojibwe First Nation. I'm glad that the chief is here to show that this can work, that this idea, this concept can roll into a workable solution. So when we're talking about solutions, in terms of setting up a foundation for education for our young people, we don't have to go to government. We don't have to look to the political organizations all the time. We can look at the hard work that's being done on the ground every day by the teachers in the schools, the social workers in the communities, and our friends in business, because I believe that's where the solutions lie. is in the work being done each and every day from beyond the political platform. Now with that said, I hope that provides a little bit of context to some of the idea that you're going to see here today. It's about capitalizing on an opportunity or unrealized potential of accessing grant money that's sitting there. It's just sitting there waiting for our children to have access to it, and we're not doing it for some reason. So we sat down for weeks and months and we talked about why aren't we doing this? Well, it's because the mechanism wasn't created. Well, my friends, I believe the mechanism is now created, and we need to execute and start beginning, building the understanding about how we can work with the tools of the day to create tomorrow's opportunity. Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Those were kind words. Arnie, we're on the same page?
Yep.
Okay. So what I want to do today is I want to help you guys understand the value of registered education savings plans, understand how easy the process is to open an RESP, and what advantages that will have when you do open an RESP. So each of you guys have a piece of paper that was left on the chair. If you guys are interested after this session and want to follow up, either for yourselves, your children, or the actual owners, and that's the market that we pursue. We're located in 6 nations, so again, I'd like to thank the Mohawk for allowing us on the traditional territory today. And we have offices in Manitoba as well. We do work nationally, so we do work in New Brunswick. We do work with the Mikisew out in Alberta and a bunch of First Nations in between. So our 2 products that we develop for the First Nations market, there's twofold. So the first one's the RESPs, which I'm going to get into and explain shortly. The other one is an electronic funds transfer. But the purpose of today's presentation is to hopefully empower you guys to go open up these RESPs for your First Nations children, or hopefully communicate our message to the decision makers that may have custody of a number of First Nations children. An example would be a child, family, and service organization. So we'll go to the next one now. So who are we? Steve Charest, Métis owner, great guy. Who am I? I'm Ojibwe from Chippewas and Nawash. They call it Cape Croker a lot. We got Arnold Bomberry, who does a lot of training. He's Mohawk. Don't hold it against him. And we got Tim Catchaway, who runs our Manitoba operations. So that's who we are. So how did we get here? What we wanted to do is, when I get into RESPs, you'll understand that there's a pool of money out there that First Nations people can access if we just do an administrative exercise. It's literally 3 pages long, and with that exercise, we can leverage a minimum of $2,000 for each child's education. So what we started with is we wanted to focus on First Nations that were affluent, to tell you the truth. So like the Membertus, the Ramas, people with maybe some extra capital that would want to use that money to leverage more money. So we met with Derek, one of the stakeholders, and we realized that that was an inappropriate way to go about it. We should be trying to help the most disadvantaged, the most vulnerable section of our society. And at Kanata, we believe that to be the children that were apprehended and are in child and family services. At the end of the day, who's looking out for their interests? Do they have a parent that will open an RESP for them? Well, so that's how we got here. We wanted to change the business model from working with affluent communities, people that have the extra money to bank with, to working with the most vulnerable and disadvantaged communities. Some of the comments we heard, so this is over 2 years in development that we've been doing it. We can't focus on the rich, we must help the most disadvantaged. First Nations organizations and First Nations have very limited resources. So whatever product you offer, you better simplify it for them because they have a lot of extra work to do, right? Where is the money invested and why is it being invested into non-native instruments? Can the money be invested back into the First Nation? We believe yes. We believe that you can aggregate these RESP holdings. So each $2,000 account can be bundled up. And what do you use that bundle for? To reinvest it back in the community. You're amplifying the effect of the dollars that you are leveraging. And I just want to state this. When I put dollar figures beside children, I'm not trying to turn them into a commodity, and I'm very sensitive to the fact that you have to be careful when you do that. The reason I'm putting dollar figures beside children is to show you real life examples. So we're going to go over a Sandy Bay case study of how much money this exercise can leverage. So please don't take offense to it. We're just trying to demonstrate how much money's out there and we can leverage for it. So, okay, so we developed an RESP program. So the RESP, if you get a baby bonus or a universal child tax benefit, they will qualify for an RESP. On reserve, thank God, we make tax-free income. So I know personally speaking, on my res or the Chippewas of Nawash and the Mississaugas of New Credit, that over 80% of the people on their First Nation would qualify for that. So it's a low-fee investment. We went to a number of different RESP providers. What they like to do, the RESP providers, in some certain circumstances, is they like to take a lot of fees out of this money that's meant to be going to children. So we were very attentive to that. We developed an administrative process where we can get children RESPs en masse. So for example, Sandy Bay has a child and family service organization. They have 600 children under that care. We've developed an administrative process whereby we can get each one of those children $2,000 up to $2,000 from the Canadian Learning Bond with $0 down. But more importantly, to these organizations that are just stretched so thin, the paperwork exercise, we simplified it, automated it, so it's incredibly easy. I'm going to stop doing that. So, you laughed a little too hard. So the system can work for both parents or institutions. So I know I spoke to a couple people that work for the education for their First Nation. You need to take this back and make sure that you guys educate your community as to the advantages of this. But if anyone here has a child under the age of 15, take this form, open them up at RESP, especially if you're on reserve and your taxable income is low. So as I'm going to demonstrate, the big thing about our strategy is we want to use this RESP money that's meant for the children, and we don't want it going to some elaborate non-native investment, right? We want that money to go back into the community to do economic development, to do housing, to do things that people actually need on a First Nation. I know it's a novel concept, but that's what we would like to do. So what's our thesis? We want to help AFOA and its members understand how to access supplemental education funding for its institutions and members by navigating existing and simple education programs. So this is federal money that's out there, right? Non-natives do it, and I'm going to explain why. There's more predilection for them to do it. But natives, for whatever reason, we're not accessing this money, right? So we all need to work together to access it. And we're going to show how these RESP funds can be reinvested back into the community. So now, what are RESPs? I know you guys are thinking that in your head for like the last 5-10 minutes. I'm going to explain what RESPs are. So, it's a savings plan sponsored by the Canadian government that encourages people to invest in their child's education. The main benefit to non-native Canadians is that you can shelter this money from tax implications. So what happens is, much like an RSP, a retirement savings plan, you can invest this money, and then when your child turns 18, they withdraw the money, and because they'll probably be unemployed, like a lot of 18-year-olds, they won't have tax implications for that. So it's traditionally, RSPs are used by the greater Canadian society to shelter money, right, for taxes. As Native people, do we need that? Not a lot of us do, especially if we're on reserve. Our money is tax-free, we can invest it wherever we want. Capital gains on reserve could be claimed by us tax-free. So, but why would Natives want to do this? Why would First Nations want to do this? They want to do this because you can access two things: the Canadian Learning Bond and the Canadian Education Savings Grant. These are both federal programs. The money is set aside and allotted there. So, Arnold, if we could. So, the characteristics of an RSP. So when you open an RSP, it's in the child's name. So if the child is emancipated, as you said earlier today, the RSP goes with them. It's in the child's name. You need a social insurance number, and then you can access the RSP. And if that child moves around through the system, like we know happens all the time, it doesn't matter where that child ends up, but when they're 18, they'll have education money for them. This money can be used for a car, it can be used for a computer, it can be used for travel, tuition, books, whatever you want. A lot of First Nations people can access education funding, right? But that will only get you an undergraduate degree, for example. If you want to be a doctor, good luck. Funding levels have remained the same, but the number of First Nations people has grown exponentially. The funding's stagnant. So there is an education gap right now, and it's growing. So what we want to help you guys do is open these RSPs to supplement traditional funding. So the money's unlocked when a child attends post-secondary unit. Eligible activities include college, the apprenticeship, and anything with the 6-month accreditation. So this isn't, not everyone should go to university. Not everyone should go to college. Our society would be horrible if we did that. If you want to be a tradesman, if you want to be a journeyman carpenter, if you want to be an apprentice of some sort, I did it again. This money will qualify for that. So don't think of it as a college or university. Think of it as post-secondary. What do you want to do after high school? This money will activate those opportunities. If the child doesn't attend post-secondary, if they hit the lottery, turn rich, whatever, they don't pay a penalty for that. All that happens is the government takes their grants back, and it goes back into the pool of money. So no harm, no foul. You know, you don't have to forecast your child, like, is my 6-year-old going to go to university? You don't have to do that. Like, just open one up. If they go to university, money's there. If they don't, so what? The money goes back to the pool. So, the RESPs can be opened with $0. Each one of us with the First Nations kid, if we qualify, with $0, you can have $2,000 eventually put into that child's education. And as we go through the administrative exercise, the logic is so compelling that I think each one of you after we leave here will want to make sure your community knows that. So Art, sorry for sound. So what are these two things? Why open an RSP if you don't need tax savings or anything like that? Because you want to access two things. The CLB, Canadian Learning Bond, and then the Canadian Education Savings Grant. So let's go to the next one so I can start explaining this. So what is the Learning Bond? The Learning Bond is intended to help low income, so read into that how you will, families pay for higher education expenses. The Learning Bond is funded by the Canadian government as part of a program to help less privileged families send their kids to college. This bond is a maximum of $2,000 per child. Per child. So when we start doing the arithmetic and the algebra and showing you how much that will mean to a community like Sandy Bay, well, I think you guys will see the value of that. So low income is defined by anybody with taxable income under $45,000. Okay. So I worked on RES as an economic development director. I made $0 taxable dollars, right? So I would qualify for this. If I was off reserve, tough luck. So if you get the baby bonus, you'll get an RSP. Think of it that way. So, what is the Learning Bond? So this is how easy it works. You open an RESP. It takes 2 forms, 2 pages. All you need is identification for your child, a SIN card, right, or a birth certificate. If your organization or children don't have that, we will hold your hand and walk you through the process. An example is if Sandy Bay needs identification, we'll call who is it? Social with the mobile unit.
Service Canada.
Service Canada. Service Canada will actually bring their truck to the First Nation and start issuing these so that we can open these investment apparatuses, right? So you open this, at the same time you open it, you fill out the forms for the CLB and the other instrument that I'm going to talk about. So literally within 5 minutes you open an RSP and you've already submitted to the government your application to access this money. First Nations RSP accounts open, so the initial deposit, just by signing in, just by opening it, just by taking a chance, you get $500 right away, right in that kid's account. For every year they've been alive before the age of 15, they will get $100 per year. This will go back retroactively. So I think I have an example here, yeah. So if you have a 10-year-old child, you open up a CLB, that's $1,500. $500 for the initial opening, and then $1,000 for each year that they've been around, right? They'll also give you $25 to open your account, to pay for the fees to open it. We're still in discussions. I'm not sure we would even charge a fee or if that's required or whatever. But if you do work with a financial institution you guys trust that your First Nations works with, and they are going to charge you a fee, you can use the CLB 25 bucks for that. So, okay, well, what's the other thing? There's actually more ways that you can leverage money from the government. The second way is the Canadian Education Savings Plan. This is a grant administered to the blah, 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 to assist with the savings of Canadian children's higher education. Basically what this is if you invest into your RSP, right, you can open it for $0, get the $2,000, that's fine. But what if you want to invest more money into your child's education? For every dollar you invest, just put that over there. So for every dollar you invest, the government will give you a minimum 20% back. So for every dollar you get 20 cents going right back into the account. That's up to, is it $7,200? Yeah, so $7,200. For families that have less income, you can even do 40 cents on the dollar. This is such a powerful instrument that in Ontario, Kathleen Wynne announced that every child in Ontario, in CFS, will have an RESP open for them. Why? Because it makes sense, man. It's the province bringing federal government in. It's like First Nations bringing more money in. But what else did she do? She put a monthly stipend, whatever, so you mentioned the payments that First Nations kids can receive, or CFS children. She earmarked a certain amount to go back into the RESPs. Why? Because it's smart business. With that dollar, she just leveraged $1.20 for each of these children. The Toronto Star had an article saying by the time Kathleen Wynne's investments went through, that it would be over $120 million of federal money brought in. That to me is amazing. So again, this goes up to $7,200. I'm not going to talk about the CSG a lot right now because this requires people to put money in to activate it. I want to talk about the bond where you get it free for opening your account. So Arnold, how does the CSG work? Same thing. When you fill out your RESP form, we're going to fill out the two forms that go to the government. If you qualify for the bond, you qualify for the CSG. So if you are going to do this with a financial institution or somebody, just make sure that you bring this up to them. Don't. I can't see anyone in the right mind opening an RSP and not submitting those forms, but hey. So Arnold? So how do you open it up? What are the actual steps? So number one, educate yourself. You need to speak to a provincially certified RESP provider. So I am one for Ontario, so we are allowed to talk. But if you're in BC, for example, you need somebody under the BC Securities. Make sure you guys do that because from what we've seen in our time in the industry, it can be shady at times. So once you educate yourself and you understand who you want to work with, what you want to do, a subscriber must open the account. What's a subscriber? The subscriber is the primary caregiver. Most situations, and God willing, this will increase as we go forward, it's going to be the parent. So the parent can open up for the child. In the instances of CFS, Child and Family Services, there is one person, the executive director of that organization, is the subscriber for many nominees. So nominees refers to the actual child. I don't know why they use those terms, I don't care either. But that one subscriber can open up 600 RESP accounts. 600. Up to 2,000. However many children you have, that one subscriber under the CFS can open up those accounts. That affords a lot of advantages. The advantage is the administrative ease that this is. So what we do, and you guys, again, I'm not trying to sell anything, I'm just trying to educate you, but what we do is we work with the client and actually fill out the forms and walk you guys through everything. Okay. So that one subscriber can just, all he has to do is sign his name, and he can even do it electronically, or her name, sorry guys. But all they have to do is just sign the document. We work everything up, and it's just this, $2,000, $2,000, $2,000. That's how literally easy it is. So the subscriber will complete the RSP forms. If you decide you want to work with us or are more interested, we'll do that for you. We'll do all that stuff for you. RSP accounts open, CLB is deposited, and then if you make contributions, you get the grant. There's 4 steps there. And like the first one's like not even a step. So there's really 3 steps. The subscriber opens the RESP, they fill out the forms, and they wait for the money to come in. It's that easy. So again, there's an unfortunate reality in Canada. A lot of children are disproportionately in the Child and Family Services. In Manitoba, it's 10,000 Aboriginal children, 7,500 are First Nations. It's appalling. This is the most vulnerable segment of Canada's population. So this is why we have a special interest to this. We all have family members or probably know somebody that actually went through the system. It touches all our lives. So that's why we went from selling a product to creating something that the most vulnerable section of Canada's society can open with ease. So we'll go to the next one, bud. So this is how an organization would open it up. 4 steps, very, very easy. They're the primary caregiver, they can sign off on all these applications. It's important to remember, if the organization opens these up on behalf of the children, they don't keep the money, the child does. The institution is only signing because they're the primary caregiver, but they have nothing to do with the money. We have nothing to do with the money. That money is in that child's name until they decide to go to post-secondary. So what we do is we develop a project manifest. So we'll go to your community, we'll work with your organization and say, okay, how many people need ID, right? It seems like something easy, but we all know that it's like herding kittens on the RESP sometimes, getting people to get IDs. So we'll work with you to maybe bring Service Canada out. That will get the birth certificates and SIM cards, and then from there we can open up the rest. We'll do a project manifest. So a lot of organizations need to take this for board approval, right? Right? A great idea, great, but you have to have this approved. So what we'll do is we'll write a briefing note for you, we'll do the project manifest, we'll come and present, and we've had a lot of success in Manitoba like that. We'll do all the paperwork and the applications, the executive director signs off. 4 easy steps. So if you have 16 kids in your education, if they have a primary caregiver, it would literally take you under 20 minutes. And with those 12 kids, you get them $24,000. 10 minutes work, so. Terminology review, this is because they use funny words. The subscriber, the person who's allowed to open the account, the parent or the organization, the nominee, the student. The Canadian Learning Bond, that's the bond for $2,000, $0 to access it. The education grant is the one that's predicated on you guys putting money in. So you put money in, you leverage more. Arnold? So, does this work? Let's see. So we have the chief of Sandy Bay in the audience right now. Give a wave, give a wave. So we work with Sandy Bay. Sandy Bay has 2 things. They have a CFS, Child and Family Services, that is operated by Board of Directors independent from Chief of Council.
Yes.
Yeah. They also have a school, awesome school by the way, with we're using the estimate of about 1,000 children. So what if this community decided to go through the RESP paper exercise, the administrative process of just signing documents, submitting them for government review? So, Arnold. So, look at this. The CFS, you would leverage $800,000. That'd be half a day, half a day's work. And we do most of the work, so we'll show up. And again, I'm not trying to get you guys to use me or whatever, but so we show up at Sandy Bay. We have all the documents prepared. We can even do it electronically for remote communities and get their signatures that way. $15,000 for account openings. You might not need that. $300,000 would go into the account day 1. $300,000 goes from the federal government to the Sandy Bay children. And then we estimated a retroactive age at about 8 years, so that'd be another $400,000. The school system would be close to $1 million. So this is a community of 3,000 with $0, zero, not $1, just the will of their community people to get their children more education money, just the will of it. They can leverage $1.7 million. Literally half an afternoon's work. 2 hours we can do this. This is why the logic is so compelling. We would be doing our kids, our communities a disservice by not filling out a form. That's all it is. And now that the First Nations community is starting to understand that the education funding gap is growing, this is going to start becoming more relevant. Can we go to the next one, Art? What's this one? Okay, so this is if you contributed monthly. This is the Ontario model, so I'm not making this up. I'm not pulling numbers out of the air. With these, you can get just the 600 kids can leverage $1.6 million. And again, this could be a simple exercise. So in Ontario, they have benefits for children in the CFS. Why not direct some of that to RESPs? Why would you do that? Because you make 20% right off the hop. Find me an investment out there where you can do that right now, immediately. Please. So that's $1.6 million. Again, in a side note, if you Google Toronto Star, Kathleen Lynn, RESPs. You guys will see this article with $120 million that they raised just by doing that. Sorry for snapping. I don't know why I'm snapping today. Just hitting this. So again, I'm just saying with $0, you can leverage 1.7 million in Sandy Bay. The chief's here, and I hope that just shows you guys that he believes in us. We're going to make the program work, and it's easy to do. Okay, can we hit it again? So, what do you do with that money? You have all these $2,000 accounts everywhere, right? Well, wouldn't it be great if you could aggregate that money and create an investment fund where that money goes back into Sandy Bay, that $1.7 million goes to Sandy Bay, where it's going to leverage a minimum of 2-to-1 debt, right? So they could solve their housing, they could open a store, they could do a business. The fund would qualify for RESP investment, so that you can't do anything shady with it. The government is very strict on this money. The covenants they put on the deal, the parameters they have around it, are so extreme that you can't do a bad deal. You can't do a bad deal. Would invest back into the communities once the funds are secured. It could provide private capital to activate the on-reserve economy, right? Financial Management Board, they do this, they do it with bonds, right? So they aggregate all these communities, they get a rating on the bond, and then they issue it on the public market. What we're proposing is work backwards. Take all these little RSPs, you want to hit that button? Take all these little RESPs, $2,000, chump change, no one would even invest that. What if you aggregate that? What if you put that into an investment facility with its own credit committee? That could be a fund, a proper fund. It could be a mortgage investment corporation. It could be many different corporate apparatuses. Whatever's best for your community, we can help you do. The fund would have a First Nations mandate and will go back into the First Nation. This is what we want. We want soup to nuts. Help these children get an RESP. Once we do that, don't put the money in a non-native institution, nothing against you guys. Make that money work for us again, right? That's the smart thing to do. So we'll go to the next one. Sandy Bay example, 1.7 million. They would have gone to, I don't know what, GICs, 20% GICs, the other 20% like mortgage back. You need housing, you have economic development opportunities. You did an opportunities study that says our community needs X, Y, and Z, and we need it now. Because our money's going to the non-native community right now. What if we use that $1.7 million, aggregated it, and put it back into Sandy Bay? And that's what we're looking at presently. So, thank you guys. I hope I didn't bore you. I wanted to just convey how compelling and logical this is. If you guys go back and talk to your CFSs or any organization, in 20 minutes work, you can leverage $1 million, real life example. He's here, we're here, so feel free to talk to us. Again, this applies to your children, so if you got any children, fill out the form, send it to us, we'll send you the information, and if you want to go with us, that's great. If you don't, just open the RESP case as well. What we want to do. So, I think I'm done, unless there's any questions.
Unbelievable. That seems like a no-brainer, what we call low-hanging fruit. So I encourage you to hear those words, and thank you for bringing that to everybody's attention. That is unbelievable. Great. So we have our next guest would like to come up and say a few words.
Oh no, we're just going to see if there's questions out there.
Questions and answer time, all right.
Q&A.
So, Q&A time, if you guys have any questions. As a matter of fact, I did have 2 questions just to start off.
Only from the audience.
One you answered.
Yeah.
Which was a direct reinvestment back into our communities, which is, again, I love the idea of just doing the RESP no matter what, but investment back into community is just an added bonus on top of this, which is unbelievable again. So, I mean, that's fantastic, so thank you.
What was the other question?
Well, I was going to ask, is it for any kind of insurable backing? So let's say if there was investment back into a community that something didn't go quite right or whatever, is there insurable backings?
You guys can hear me? So what happens is if you have an RESP or RRSP investment, it has to qualify as an investment. So if the money goes off and it doesn't activate or work, the due diligence is there, the safety things are there, and sometimes, you know, people default on their houses. Sometimes a business goes under. That's the world we live in. But if we don't take the risk on ourselves, I assure you, in my time in banking, the banks are not gonna help us, so.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Yes.
Is the 2,500 a one-time or is it an annual?
Yes. So it's a $2,000 grant. It's called the Canadian Learning Bond. So what happens is as soon as you open it, $500. If your child's 10 years, you'll get another 1,000, right? And then once he turns 11, they'll put another $100 in there. Once he turns 12, another $100 until you hit your 2,000. Then when the child's 18, he withdraws that, or her withdraws that money, buys a car. So on my res, everybody wants to do something but can't travel anywhere, right? Because cars are expensive, they don't have the money. Something like this would be imperative for them. They can actually get in that car, drive and buy their textbooks with the First Nations funding. So we're going to be loitering around here outside, so we'd love to give you guys some more information.
Other questions?
I just have a question in regards to communities. If you're looking at CFS communities, and I know that we have several in Ontario, would you be prepared to come out and present to the
Yes.
directors?
Absolutely. I even offered that. It's almost like we set that up. Yeah, we've been to Sandy Bay twice. The first time there, I fell in front of about 500 people on a thing of ice, so I lost their respect forever. But we go to all these different First Nations, and we would love to. We'd love to present to whoever is interested. And again, this isn't something that we make revenue from. There's no revenue stream that we have here. What we want to do is just build relationships, and we want to get RESPs for every Native kid out there.
I talk loud.
I know you.
So do you go to every, like any nation in Canada, or is this
Yeah.
only Eastern provinces?
No, we do other businesses. So we're always in Northern Alberta. We were just in Fort Mac working with Mikisu and everybody. We're going to New Brunswick next month, aren't we? Yeah. Anywhere, wherever you guys want us, let us know. And if we can't do it, we set up a video cast where we're in our boardroom, you're in your boardroom, we can present that way if it's more cost effective. Where are you out of, just out of curiosity?
I'm from Alexis Nakota Nation in Alberta.
Okay, how close is that to Northern Alberta, or like the Calgary,
We're
Edmonton airport?
central, Edmonton. Yeah, we're about an hour away from Edmonton.
Okay, let us present next month. We'll work with Arnie and set that up, because we're out there anyway.
So you're, if every year there's $500 and then what, then $100 and $100, is that in like if you just had that alone, would there be like interest on that? Would it be in a savings account? Like,
Yeah, you'd make money. So I think the average, Steve, was about 3 or 4%, 5% with the RESP investments. She's wondering how much markup we get, how much growth.
Well, I mean, what we looked at is the traditional model outside of the banks are the large companies that are doing this, heritage, financial, so on and so forth. What they do with these contributions is they take all their sales and commission administration fees up front. So they automatically shrink the account immediately. And instead of that, through the last couple of years of kicking this around, we thought, well, hang on a sec, let's not take anything out, let's leave it in there. And what would be a reasonable expectation on an investment return for something like an initiative in Sandy Bay? If Sandy Bay went to the bank and said, hey, TD Bank, I'd like to borrow $1 million. Okay, here's $1 million at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5%. That's kind of the threshold that we had in mind as far as growth, is what would the bank traditionally charge for a approved investment that they would lend on. So that's kind of the standard that we built in with the modeling.
But so to answer your question, the $2,000 would make anywhere from like 3 to 6%, however the market's doing, right? And what they traditionally invest in is very low risk investments like GICs, T-bills, all these things. Because the one thing you don't want to do is lose the child's education money.
The other thing is too, is that you are investing $100. The federal government will match your $100 up to the $7,500 credit.
So if you choose to invest yourself, so the $2,000 from the government, again, paperwork exercise, that's the low-hanging fruit we could go over. If, as a community, as a nation, as people, we want to put in monthly contributions, yeah, you make 20% right off the hop, right? So, and that's why the Ontario government and many other groups, so when we presented to Manitoba, they all knew about it, but they were stretched so thin, that they couldn't get the resources to do it. And that was part of our issue, was to take the administrative burden off of them, put it on us, because we're good at paperwork, and we'll do it.
And if I may, that's also every year. It's not just 1 year. The government will match that up to that for every single year. So it's actually pretty incredible if you are investing your own money into it. I just did that, but I had no idea this existed. Otherwise, I might have transferred. But can you transfer your RESPs to something?
Yes, we would be willing to take on your RESP money.
Yeah, interesting. So there you go. If you already have RESPs, it's almost like we scripted that, but it's okay. Other questions?
Derek would like to make a comment?
I'd like to
No swearing.
pass it over to our Grand Chief.
Just, I just wanted to, because I don't think we can overemphasize the importance of ensuring that we're investing for tomorrow's prosperity. And we've been, from the presentation that I've seen here today, we've talked about two basic communities. One being the children that are in CFS, and also parents with children in the community. But keep in mind that a lot of your communities back home, you're sitting on settlement trusts, you know, and your settlement trusts are being invested based on, you know, whatever the terms of the trust are. But oftentimes, I think we overlook the necessity to provide the children with the solid foundation they need. So by drawing out some of that settlement trust, getting these RESPs set up, and providing a little bit of a contribution from that settlement trust for each and every child in your community, that number grows exponentially. From age 0 to age 18, that number grows exponentially. And like I said before, what more can we do to demonstrate to our children that we value the opportunity that they've brought by coming into this world and carrying us forward within our nations? I cannot overemphasize that enough. So each and every one of you, I challenge you to go home to your community, find out what kind of settlement trust you're sitting on in your community, and find out what your leadership has dedicated and how they're investing that dollar for the children today, for tomorrow's opportunity. I challenge you to do that, because every settlement trust should have a portion dedicated to exactly this concept.
Okay, great. Strong words. Thank you, Grand Chief, and it's an honor to have you here. I would echo that. Let's challenge each other to even go back. And you've got all the support you've heard from people who are doing this, and it is worth it for our children's future. So if there are any other questions or that, I wanted to say Chimagwech for coming out in Yahweh and in Mohawk language. We will continue the programming afterwards. There's plenty more still going in the afternoon, and of course our banquet tonight. So on behalf of the AFOA Canada, we want to thank you for your presentation and that wonderful knowledge that you have shared with us here. This is what this is about, sharing knowledge to better our people and our future. Jody, do we have...
They're right there, but
Where are they?
you're talking about my prize.
There, there's a prize, yes. The prize. Like to the presentation. Thank you very much. We have one more. Grand Chief. Great.
Can I open it later?
It's, yeah, you can open it whenever you want. It's just a box of chocolates, I'll eat it. So. Great. Miigwech, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
That was great.
Great job. Yeah. Good job, guys.